Future Foundation. I'm Julia Sushchenko, the moderator of today's meeting, and I would like to introduce you the Finnish writer, the author of the famous novel called Dog Playground. It's Sofi Oksanen. It has been published, this book has been published in Ukraine this year. And that is a novel that opens our sight, our eyes towards new and maybe not very well known for our readers problems. That is the problems, maybe ethical problems, the questions, the issues of cell donorship, the egg cells that are being exported from Ukraine to the Western countries. This uneasy topic that is not spoken much about in the Ukrainian media landscape, but this topic has been raised by the Finnish author Sofi Oksanen. Sofi has been translated into Ukrainian several times. 4 of her novels have been translated and published into Ukrainian in Ukraine. Some of them were used as for staging in Ukrainian theaters. That is why the name of Sofi is already known for Ukrainian readers. But not every day we have the opportunity to talk directly to the author and to learn about her motivation for writing this novel. So I would propose that we can start with the reading. And maybe we will listen for a minute or two to your novel in your native language as it was written in. And then the actress of Odesa drama theater, Alisa Bushkova, will continue reading it in translation. So I hope we can start. So please, Sofi, we invite you to read some pages.
Yes, and this is the original Finnish cover. Tuoreemmassa kuvassa isällä oli parin päivän sänki, yllään ainoastaan hihaton aluspaita. Sen kellastuneet tereet repsottivat. Sormissa roikkui ihukkeeseen kiinnitetty savuke. Kyynärpäät nojasivat keittiön pöytään. Ikkunalaudalla rehotti harventamattomia tomaatintaimia, joita tukevat kepit olivat pinossa, voimattomia. Avattuun kurkkupurkin ja keitettyjä perunoita kukkuroivan emaljevainin välissä nökötti etiketitön viinapullo. Tunnelma oli lannistunut. Raskasta lahattu tuhkapuppia tuskin erotti tuhkapummun alta. Tikkuaski oli tyhjä, laseja oli 3, vieraita ei näkynyt.
Please, Alisa, you can read in Ukrainian. Thank you. Now the reading. Thank you, Alisa. I have chosen this piece to interest you. It's like a small teaser of the novel, because in general, each chapter of this novel can be read, and it is very, very interesting. And speaking a little bit beforehand, I can also say that there is a whole chapter dedicated to Odesa. It will be very interesting to read for the people who reside here in Odesa, how this city is seen and perceived by our Western guests from Western world. So, Sophie, my question to you, my first question, when I was reading this novel, I had a feeling that it hasn't been written by a Finnish writer, but by a Ukrainian who knows exactly all the small peculiarities of our life, who so exactly can describe all the moments, even when we speak about the vaccination, as in this piece that has been read now. How did you learn all this? Where?
Because anyway, I'm a Finnish Estonian and I write in Finnish and I haven't ever lived in Ukraine. But of course I did research for the novel. And of course I also had help from Ukrainians. So, and I have to also thank my Ukrainian reader, Ihor Butcher, who was essential for the novel, because there are too many Ukrainians, understandably, who can read Finnish, but he can read fluently Finnish. So I'm not sure if I had dared to write the novel without him reading the Finnish manuscript before the book went to the print. Because I wanted to have the, reassurance that there was not something very weird, because of course I do understand that, for example, when I think about foreigners writing about Finland, then usually there's something weird, something that feels like, and I'm sure that there might be still something that is weird for Ukrainians, so I apologize for that, but one has to try, and I tried my best.
В мене не виникло такого.
I didn't get this feeling that something was wrong. Please tell me, Sophie, why this topic?
Plenty of different reasons why to write Dog Park. Well, for example, in Estonia, which is my other home country, Ukrainians are the second biggest ethnic minority. And for example, Estonian kitchen is closer to Ukrainian kitchen than actually to Finnish kitchen. So they are, from Estonian perspective, Ukraine is closer than actually from Finnish perspective. One reason why I have wanted to write about Ukraine for a long time, but especially after the Revolution of Dignity, I was expecting Finnish publishing houses to publish books by Ukrainian authors. It's always when something is breaking news all over the world, like the revolution, for instance, then the publishers all around the world, they start picking up books from that territory. So I was expecting the Finnish publishing houses to do the same. They didn't. Instead, they published books about the revolution by Finnish writers and Finnish correspondents, but not by Ukrainians. And they didn't pay attention to Ukrainian fiction authors either. And that I found very disappointing. it was very different compared to, for example, after Balkan War. Finnish publishing houses, they published so many authors from that region. But when it comes to Ukraine, that didn't happen, even though Ukraine was in the headlines every single day. And it wasn't about that the Finns wouldn't be interested in Ukraine, but Finnish publishers were not interested in Ukraine. They, for some reason, didn't think it, in a way, important enough to be published. And I think that is one of the consequences of, well, Soviet shadow and colonialization in that way that during the Soviet years, Finnish publishing houses did publish Soviet authors. But after that, there was a gap, and that gap hasn't been filled. And they didn't learn to think that Ukraine matters also as a literary country and culture. So I got so frustrated when I understood that they truly are not going to publish anything. With one exception, they did publish, well, but that was not again by Ukrainian. They did publish the first book in Finnish about Holodomor by Anne Applebaum, The Red Terror. And of course, I'm happy that we had the first book available in Finnish about Holodomor, and Anne Applebaum's book is a very good one, but still, they could have also published Ukrainian authors. But anyway, that didn't happen, and so I thought that, okay, perhaps this is the moment when I can write about Ukraine and maybe raise interest, and if Finnish readers find my book interesting, then it's anyway a sign for the Finnish publishing houses that, okay, that Ukraine is actually something that is also interesting for Finnish readers. And well, there hasn't been sign of a huge interest in Ukrainian authors, but I do trust that they will, you know, sooner or later. Sometimes publishing is just a very slow business. But anyway, that was one of the motives that really made me think that, okay, this is the moment I need to write about Ukraine. And then, of course, there were many of different storylines or characters I could have picked up from Ukraine, of course. But then what I've learned over the years is that you have to give something to different generations, so to speak. For example, when I wrote my first novel, Stalin's Cows, which was published in Finnish 2003, it was about the Soviet history and eating disorders. And even though you might think that, okay, there's no connection, but I think I managed to make the connection. And what I was thinking at the time was that I wanted the younger generation to be interested in Soviet history. And at the time, then definitely we could see that aggressive winds in Russia were really starting to whirl up. And at the same time, in Finland, the younger generation didn't think Russian or Soviet Union interesting at all. So my solution was to write about something that I think they will most likely be interested in, that is eating disorders, and connect it with something I wanted them to know more. So this was the background to think about why fertility business, because fertility business is an international business. So that means that there is a connection to other countries as well. And I think, of course, that the topic is important. Western countries should be more aware of that. But it's also a human interest topic that I know that it's interesting for different generations and also readers who are not actually interested in Ukraine. They don't have connection to Ukraine, for example. But if they find the other topics interesting, then they will be forced to read about Ukrainian recent past as well. So this is kind of my tactic to seduce readers who might not be interested in the topics I think they should be interested.
Дякую, зрозуміло. Але скажіть, будь ласка, от в мене виникло питання, коли ви говорили про те, що ви хочете зацікавити фінів, да, до
Finnish people to read about Ukraine. How many copies of your book have been sold in your country so far? Do you know the number? У твердій обкладинці 25 тисяч.
And then we have, of course, the audiobooks and the pocket editions coming up as well.
коли
When I was reading this novel, I have a lot of visual images in my eyes, and somehow I had the idea that it would be interesting to transfer it into cinema, into movie, and maybe film a kind of series based on this novel, and it could be very popular on Netflix. Do you have any ideas like that, or maybe dreams to make a visual series based on your novel? Звичайно, було би цікаво і приємно побачити.
TV productions and movie productions, they or the whole movie industry is such a hazy and uncertain business that I'm happy when if and when the rights are sold, but I don't want to be involved with writing the script myself. But you know, sometimes it takes time, and it's important to find the right partner, the most reliable partner in film industry. For example, the Stalin's House, my debut novel, which was published in Finnish in 2003, then the TV show rights were acquired just last year, so it will be a TV show, but it took like, wait a second, 17 years from publishing the novel to, you know, to get it into a TV production. But of course, I'm happy that the topics and the themes are still considered interesting for the present audience.
я просто згадала, який розголос
How much fuss was caused by the Chernobyl series, and how many tourists came to Ukraine after it has been shown. You must have also seen this.
Yeah.
І я знаю, що
I know that as after the film Chernobyl, a touristic route was created. I know that a touristic route along Ukraine has been creating based on your book. But because of the pandemics, the launch of this project has been postponed. But maybe this year it will, or it has happened. Маємо надіюся.
звісно, тобто ще не було.
So it didn't start yet, yes? So there have been no tourists who have traveled along this route. Ні, на жаль, ні. Сподіваюся, що...
Я знаю, що ви подорожували.
I know that you have traveled along Ukraine a few years ago. You have visited a lot of cities. Also the cities you have described in your novel. But I didn't quite understand. Have you been before writing the novel or after doing this? Перед написанням. So all these characters that we can read about, you have felt them from your own experience, so to say, yes?
Characters is like characters are like a puzzle. I might, you know, I might see a gesture, for example, and then even though I might not kind of pick it up at the moment when I see it, but then it's somehow in my subconscious, and certainly when I have a character, then my subconscious gives this gesture to the character, and then I understand, yes, I remember seeing that gesture, and now it is actually part of this character. So
you have mentioned already that Finnish people do not know much about our country, about Ukraine, and you wanted to fill this niche with your book, this gap. But when I was reading the book, I felt somehow that Ukraine is depicted not in the most pleasant way again.
To be a travel guide or a diplomat either. But what I think is that when you people don't feel empathy towards a postcard, nor to the advertisement. So in that way, what I think is one of the main, I don't know, agenda might be a wrong word, or mission, but what makes literature different compared to many other narrations is that literature can create empathy. Empathy and compassion. And feelings are important. So happy stories don't actually get compassion. So I leave those to Hollywood. But I think what I also hope that readers might understand, for example, that that road to democracy is a very slow one, and from Nordic point of view, in a way, they are expecting the change to happen in a second. They don't have the patience, and of course, I'm sure that sometimes Ukrainians are also a bit tired of slow change, that the change is always slow. And I'm not sure, because we do need, and you do need support for sanctions, for example. And Ukraine don't get the support from sanction if there is no compassion. That is, the support for sanction is definitely a matter of heart. For politicians, it might be, a matter of money. But for ordinary voters, it's definitely a matter of heart. And politicians, anyway, need to listen to the public opinion.
Так, але
But still, I have the feeling that the image of a Ukrainian woman in the West is not very positive. That are women who are engaged in sex industry, or another trend, like the donorship of egg cells.
I'm very familiar with, since it was the stereotype of Estonian woman as well in Finland. When I grew up, Estonians women were considered in Finland prostitutes and men were considered criminals. So this is something Finns prefer not think about it, like in 2021. But that was the case. And also, when you think about the tabloids or the headlines in Finnish media at the time, then, for example, one I remember very clearly that was like, is prostitution in genes for Estonian women? Yes, so that was the image of Estonian women, you know, not that long ago in Finland. So, but it has changed, and it has changed. I'm not saying that it is 100% okay, but it's definitely better. It is definitely better because there is more connection between Estonia and Finland. Finns travel a lot to Estonia. Estonians come to work in Finland. So the more there is everyday ordinary life communication, and the broader the picture becomes, the less influential the stereotypes are. And this goes for, well, anything. And the problem, the stereotype itself is not the problem. When we think about Ukrainian or Eastern European women, the problem is the lack of multiple voices, the lack of multiple images. So we cannot pretend that there are no sex workers or there are no egg donors. We cannot pretend that because they do exist. But there should be also other kind of stories. And that's why, for example, I would very much like the Finnish publishers to publish Ukrainian authors, you know, but as the limit, the number of narrations depicting Ukraine is very narrow, and that is why the stereotypes are highlighted. So that is why we need more books about Ukraine, fiction and non-fiction. We need TV shows and movies. We need all sorts of things. I mean, when we think about, well, let's think about Americans. If our knowledge or the understanding of Americans was based only on, let's say, only on TV shows, we think that they are all serial killers. But we don't think like that because we see and hear much more different kind of stories. So the problem isn't the stories about sex workers or export brides or egg donors or surrogate mothers. The problem is the very limited number of stories. And that, of course, that's you know, how to broaden the number of narrations is a task where we need interest for Ukrainian stories from, well, production companies, publishing houses, media as well, and tourism. So this is all the sum of all this.
Дякую, я зрозуміла вашу відповідь.
Answer and your opinion. I want to say that we're now in the green room of the House of the Scientist. We have some audience here. Maybe they have some questions to Sofi Oksanen. If you don't mind, then we will give the possibility for the guests to ask questions. Yes, we have a question. I will now give the microphone to the lady. Thank you, thank you. My name is Tatiana. I'm from Odesa. I'm a psychologist. And I would like to clarify why this name. It is somehow offensive. Playground for dogs, dog park. Who is the dogs here? Who are the animals? Хороше запитання.
Itself is a For example, a symbol
лояльності.
we recognize from art history, for example. But in this novel, a dog park is representing differences between Finland and Ukraine, and how people are. What I think is that, in Finland we have lots of dog parks. That is parks for dogs. For example, in a district where I live, there's like 5 dog parks around me, and they are all well-groomed parks. And now they start actually to have, even better parks where dog parks are free, so they are maintained by the city. But now they start to have new kind of dog parks, so that is dog parks with admission. So they are even better dog parks. But dog parks, I think dog parks is representing a country where the city can even, can afford to take care of parks for dogs. And one thing is that in Ukraine, you have lots of guard dogs. So, you might not even notice that you have lots of them. But when you come to Ukraine, you do hear a lot of, dogs, and you know that they are guard dogs. And in Finland, you don't actually see guard dogs. So in a way that in the book, the dogs in Ukraine, they have a function for protecting, and in Finland, dogs are not for protection. They are pets that are taken to their own parks. And of course, there's also the question about breeding as well. So so there are lots of different meanings for the puppies.
Дякуємо, Софі.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I want to ask a question, well, maybe 3 short questions, which are traditional for all our guests of the festival. Question number 1. The symbol of the festival is a comma. What is your favorite sign? Думаю, знак питання.
Яке слово
What word can you see most frequently in your text? So what is the favorite word that you use in text? Or a parasite word?
My favorite word is probably not included in my work at all. My favorite word in Finnish is love, but it's in Finnish language, love doesn't have exactly the same meanings as in English. In English, you might say to everybody, if you are having a phone call and you can say, bye, I love you. But a Finn wouldn't ever do that. When a Finnish person says, I love you, that's like serious. You might say that only once in your lifetime. So it's serious. It's really serious. So in that way, I think that's my favorite word. But it's such a huge word that I'm sure I have mentioned it in dog park, maybe, I don't know. Translator would know better, maybe once. And I don't know how it's translated, but in a way that it's not likely that I'm using this word many times in my work, because in Finnish language it is really like a huge word. You cannot use it in vain. You really have to, when you use it, it should really have importance of a lifetime.
А скажіть, будь ласка,
Please. Can you say love in Finnish?
Rakkaus.
дуже цікаво, дякую.
And the last question of our blitz. Who or what can save this world?
I'd say voters. But of course, that would they would have the importance in a country where you have democratic elections, and not all countries have. But on the other hand, you know, voters are the ones who can also start a revolution and make the change. So in that way, yeah, that is my answer. But I have to I want to add that why exclamation mark is my favorite is connected actually to my answer about voters, because exclamation mark is my favorite because it represents curiosity. And if you don't have curiosity about the life, then you cannot. A person who is curious can imagine alternatives. And if you cannot imagine in alternatives for a better future, then the future is rather hopeless. So in that way, I'm hoping that the voters have the curiosity about the better future as well.
Дякуємо вам.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for the very interesting answer. The time of our session has almost come to the end. I want to say thank you for your active position, that you are a kind of a bridge to Ukraine for the Finns and other citizens of Europe. I really hope that your next novel will also be about our country. Maybe it will be a completely different topic. So we wait for your new books and translations of them. Дякую. Дякую. We expect you also in Odesa. I know you have been here before. Я також сподіваюся побачитися з вами. І
Дуже вам дякуємо.
thank you very much. I would like to remind that we are in the 7th Literature Festival, International Festival in Odesa, in partnership with Allianz Kulturstiftung and with the financial assistance of Ukrainian Culture Fund and the Responsibility and Future Fund. We will meet you tomorrow.